title as well. So where, oh, just bear with me just a second, I've got a message on my screen, there we go, I've got rid of it. But also this idea of societal multilingualism as well, where, and of course, the two aren't necessarily completely separate. So let's sort of think about then the increased focus on multilingualism. And as I've already said, it's not a new phenomenon, but there are several factors that have contributed to its increased visibility. And, you know, as I'm sure we all recognise and understand, you know, globalisation has played a kind of key role in this, but also increased transnational mobility. And, you know, we're doing this presentation, you know, using technology. So, you know, that whole sort of boom in development and spread of new technologies. And I think what that has shown us that there's a real added value to being able to speak and communicate in different languages. What I just wanted to do for a couple of moments is so the next two slides really look at this from particularly from an EU perspective, because obviously the Erasmus Plus project is, you know, it was a European funded project, so we were coming at this very much from a European perspective, but obviously we recognize that, you know, multilingualism is a worldwide phenomenon, but obviously, you know, our remit was very much looking within Europe. So, you know, our project was really kind of in response to, or to try and respond to, the increase of multilingual pupils in Europe. So, you know, the refugee crisis, you know, the Ukrainian war, and also the push by the EU. They recognised that there was kind of major gaps really in terms of EU citizens' sort of literacy, numeracy and digital skills. And so it was really sort of to try, you know, what do we do to try and address that, and also to try and stimulate upward social mobility. We kind of read a lot around that in preparation for the bid, and with a view to that actually this would then generate EU citizens who are kind of in a better position to contribute in a positive way to the workforce, the economy, and also society more broadly. The couple of sort of the language gap and digital gap, they were sort of by Johnston, Zentella and Hargitay. They were people that we drew upon in terms of the bid, because, you know, they had kind of said, you know, look, these are real issues and challenges for both educators, but, you know, but more broadly society as a whole. Just to say a little bit more about sort of EU policy and multilingualism. As I've already said, you know, this was very much a key driver behind the project, and really sort of helped us to sort of hone our focus. And as I've already said, you know, that these sort of literacy, numeracy, digital skills, you know, were among, or are among, you know, the 8 key competencies identified by the EU. So, you know, and if I can just draw your attention to sort of 2005, you know, the emphasis on multilingualism is such that the EU, you know, has said, you know, it would like all its EU citizens to be able to communicate in 2 foreign languages in addition to their mother tongue. So, why mathematics and languages? Well, I think as the team began to sort of explore this, we recognised that there were a number of synergies between mathematics and languages. And sort of reading around a lot of the research around mathematics and also languages. I mean, and I should also say, really, I said at the beginning, I am actually a linguist. I'm coming at this from a linguistic perspective, but obviously the team was made up of mathematicians and languages. So we had, you know, good set of complementary skills. But we were able to recognise that mathematics and languages can both provoke feelings of anxiety and also negative attitudes. So what we were sort of looking to do was to provide learners with alternative or different contexts that offer new opportunities to, sorry, my presentation is jumping ahead, of sort of new ways of seeing things, of engaging with key concepts, and sort of new ways of seeing things, and really with a view to getting students to think of themselves as being part of a community. Now, obviously, this is a STEM conference, but obviously, for the purpose of the project, you know, we're looking at very much about mathematics. So, you know, that was a lot of conversation around, well, actually, you know, if learners are to see themselves as part of a community, in the case of this project as mathematicians, language obviously plays a huge part in that, and they need to be able to use that language independently and with confidence. You know, so they need to be able to communicate those and share those ideas. And the other thing that we sort of came to recognise, and something I've learned as a linguist from the mathematicians on the project, was actually this idea of mathematics being a language in itself, with its own register and with its own syntax. So we've acknowledged understanding is crucial in mathematics, and one way of deepening understanding is through practical experiences, and this is really what we were trying to do through the game-based learning resources that I'll show you shortly. But of course, for these practical experiences to be of meaning, then, as I've already said, learners and students need to be able to talk about these. And in sharing those ideas, what that enables them to do is it enables them to sort of construct their own knowledge and to begin to forge meaning. So, as I said, in order to connect those ideas, you know, language is central to that process. And the other thing about mathematics is that it can be a very, very abstract and highly compressed language for learners. So that can present real challenges for learners. And often what's required is for educators to bring that back into context that learners can both access and also understand. And if we just sort of take the idea of language as mathematics as a language, I've included this quote here from Pulshock, you know, and it's this idea that mathematics is a universal language. So irrespective of one's culture or country, gender, race, or even religion, then there are certain mathematical principles remain true. Although, and whilst we do adhere to that, still, I think our experiences through the project actually kind of call that into question a little bit, because I know there isn't time to go into too much detail now, but there've been instances when developing the game-based learning resources when there's been a realization, well, actually that's not strictly true, and ways of representing mathematics are not actually necessarily universal. So that was kind of quite interesting to kind of encounter that. And then Moorsound also back in 2007 really kind of developed this idea of mathematics as a language, so that it has its own lexis, its everyday and technical vocabulary, grammar in terms of the ways that ideas are expressed, and its own syntax, as I've already said, so that its own rules and conventions. And, you know, it's very much about mathematics as being highly compressed set of symbols. It's used by a community of experts and that are using a specialist language register. So that, of course, then begs the problem, you know, what does this mean then for learners generally, but, you know, for the purpose of this talk, for multilingual learners, and what, if anything, can actually be done to remove some of those barriers. This quote I've included from a report for the Australian government back in 2008 recognised that actually the fact that mathematics is, you know, sort of highly abstract, lots of sort of symbolic representations. Actually, many students actually see this, it's viewed as a foreign language. So there's a lot of talk at the moment as well. I'm just back from a conference in Portugal, which is very, very interesting to hear sort of some of the latest developments around this. And there's a lot of talk around pluraliteracies. And again, that's beyond the scope of this presentation this morning. But what I'm going to say now kind of connects, I hope, to what I've just said. And it's this, going back to this idea of students being able to think and act like mathematicians or scientists or historians. And there's a lot of talk now around disciplinary literacies, and some of you, I'm sure, may be familiar with this. And what I mean by that is this idea of ways of knowing and expressing that knowledge and understanding, and that it can look, there can be some crossover, there can be some interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary skills involved, but there are also, there are also some very, very subject specific, discipline specific ways of expressing that knowledge. So I think that's pivotal when we think about students being able to think and act like scientists or mathematicians or historians. So we're now on to sort of giving you a brief overview of the project that I was the PI for, that finished in December 2021. So there were two principal aims of this project. The first was really to explore how we might use game-based learning as a vehicle and context to create learners who are more mathematically and linguistically literate. And secondly, the second aim was really about developing those game-based learning resources to deepen students' conceptual understanding in an area of mathematics, and also at the same time try to promote greater linguistic competence, but also confidence when using the language. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the app, Fractal Quest app. You might think, why fractions? Well, when we were putting the bid together, there was a lot of conversation about, well, what should the focus of the project be? And it was very much deemed that fractions were an area of mathematics that across the project team, you know, so we had colleagues in Salzburg, Cordoba, Brussels, Turin, and without almost pausing for breath, all the mathematicians on the team said fractions. So that was kind of how, if you're wondering how we arrived at sort of Fractal Quest and the focus being on fractions, that's very much what fueled that. So to say a little bit about what underpins the Fractal Quest app and also the digital portfolio that I'll show you shortly. There are kind of four key elements. So obviously we've got the mathematics, we've got the language or languages, because we were working in, sorry, doing it again, multiple languages, not just English. And then a pedagogical approach called content and language integrated learning, or CLIL for short, which is really in brief, it really is looking at teaching subject content through a language of instruction that may not be the learner or the student's first language. And then we've got the game-based learning. So they're the kind of four key elements. This diagram, what we're trying to sort of show here is obviously the four key elements, but also how that what we propose is this pedagogical approach, CLIL, is actually at the heart of what we've tried to do, and it's really what unites the other three domains. The other interesting thing that we kind of discovered, I suppose, as a result of doing this project was that actually we've been thinking about, okay, yes, we've got the main language and the additional language, whatever that might be. Obviously for my European counterparts, it was predominantly English. But obviously we also then became increasingly aware of this L3 and actually this maths language that I've been talking about already so far. So, you know, this was very much in the forefront of our minds when we were actually developing both the app and also the digital portfolio. So as I've said, you know, we hit on fractions, and there are 6 games within the app. So the first one looked at equivalent fractions, and we'll take a quick look at that shortly. And then adding and subtracting fractions. The third game looked at multiplying fractions. The fourth game deals with the division of fractions. And then game 5, it's all about converting fractions. And then game 6 is all about consolidation. So the idea that students then apply all the knowledge and understanding that they've acquired about fractions, and they actually then apply that within that game 6. Okay. What I should say as well at this point is, before we go any further, that we designed these games so that they could be standalone. So there's not the expectation that students and teachers would work through, you know, start with equivalent fractions and then move on to adding and subtracting fractions. They've been designed and developed so that they can actually operate as a standalone. So what we have here, I thought it might be quite nice for, rather than just to talk about the app in a kind of abstract terms, it might be quite nice to have a quick look at actually what the app looks like. This is obviously a screenshot. It's not live. I couldn't face the thought of another technical worry. So this is a screenshot. So once students and teachers have logged in with a username and password, this is what they see. Okay, and then just to give you a kind of quick overview of some of the key features of the game. One of the things that we were really anxious to do with this was to have an engaging narrative that kind of wraps around all the games, to really kind of sort of set the scene, but also to try and capture the imagination of the students and also kind of sustain motivation. As I've kind of already alluded to, I think, in what I've said a few months ago, they've got to apply what they know about different aspects of fractions to solve a series of challenges and problems, because obviously, as we know, that's a key fundamental element of game-based learning. And in doing so, they're actually then constructing their own knowledge. As you'll see shortly, there are 3 levels within each game, and the idea is that the difficulty and complexity of the mathematical content increases as the learners progress through the different levels. And again, we were really anxious to try and ensure that when students were playing the games, they were being exposed to the mathematical problems and language simultaneously. And that was actually quite tricky to try and ensure that there was sufficient exposure to language. And we had lots of conversations about, you know, how do we resolve some of these issues? And I'll come back to that in a short while. Again, something we were keen to ensure was present in the games were opportunities for students to take risks and to experiment with what they know. And if any of you know anything about game-based learning, you know, one of the fundamental requirements of effective game-based learning is that actually not only are students or players encouraged to fail and make mistakes, you know, it's actually a requirement. So students are able to do this in a relatively safe space, which I think is, you know, is very, very important. They can progress at their own pace. So again, trying to sort of facilitate greater learner autonomy. And I think from a multilingual perspective, students having that opportunity to actually have some element of control over their own learning, I think is you know, has proven to be quite beneficial in the little bits of data that we've managed to acquire. And then also the multifunctionality, so introducing students to new concepts and giving them an opportunity to either consolidate, revisit prior learning, and check their understanding. And again, from a linguistics point of view, that the language that the students encounter is actually meaningful, and they're actually using it in a purposeful way. So I've talked a little bit about the narrative. So this is what once the students have logged in, they can then select the game of their choice or the game that they've been instructed to complete by the teacher. As I've already said, they don't have to complete them in order. They're designed to be standalone. But before students can play the game, there's an opportunity for them to actually listen to the narrative that accompanies each game. So again, that's helping to sort of improve language skills. I'm hoping the technology is going to work now. So what I've got here, I'm hoping will work, is just a little audio snapshot of what the students might hear. So I'm not going to play it all because it's probably a couple of minutes, so it's disappeared again. Apologies, just a second. There we go. Oh no, just bear with me, sorry, apologies. I'll just pause it there because that gives you a little bit of a
Sarah, sorry, we didn't hear anything there.
Oh. I was worried that you wouldn't necessarily be able to hear the audio.
Do you want to try again?
I'll try again. Am I okay for time?
Yes, we're all right for time. We've got another 20 minutes or so.
Is that working?
We're not hearing anything.
Let me just, I wonder, oops, let me just try, see if I mute myself. Let me see if I mute.
We've got a comment in the chat says you have to share sound. So is there a way that you can share? Is there a switch that you can pull to? You need to press the function of sharing the sounds. We're getting help from
let's have a look.
Our global audience. Thank you.
Right. Actually, I say I'm not familiar with Zoom, the controls on Zoom. So how do I? Let's just see what I go into that.
It might. So we've got another suggestion: is you stop the screen sharing, and then when you start it again, there'll be a share audio.
Right. Okay. I'm just concerned about the time.
We've also got a comment in the chat saying on the little dots on it that there should be a share audio.
Right. Okay. Let's have a look. Share sound. Okay. Right. Let's try that. Thank you for that. That's really good. Right. Let's try it. Should we try again?
Yeah.
Sorry about this.
No problem.
Go. See you now.
Captain Taylor is a brave and noble Sky Knight. He has spent years collecting pieces of a map to lead him to the lost city, Multiplicity, on the island of Meros. He is going to travel there in his airship, the Numerator, in search of the magic compass. Hi, my name is River. I work on Captain Taylor's airship, the Numerator. I dream of a life of adventure. I hope to one day be a...
Yeah, so that gives you a little bit of a flavour of the narrative and the audio. So, you know, one of the reasons is just in addition to wanting to kind of give that context and motivate the students and to sort of sustain that interest and motivation was also from sort of the language perspective, because one of the things that we were very conscious of, without the narrative, there wasn't really scope within the game or the digital portfolio for students to actually hear the language. So they'd be engaging with a lot of written language within the course of the games and the digital portfolio, but not opportunities to hear it. So we thought that this was a good way of actually developing students' oral skills as well. And you've probably ascertained from that little snippet that there are three kind of principal characters in the story. We've got Captain Taylor and his apprentice River. And of course, no good story would be complete without a protagonist. And our protagonist is the evil Sky Lord Quinn. And the whole premise is around Captain Taylor and River are, as it says on the screen there, they're on a quest to find the lost city of Multiplicity and retrieve the magic compass. And of course, evil Sky Lord's Quinn's mission is to stop them doing that. So, and it's quite fundamental actually that to how we've developed the games. So we'll move on. So a very quick preview of the game. So these next three slides really sort of hopefully demonstrate how we've tried to embed language and also demonstrate how the level of mathematical challenge increases as the students progress through the three levels. So it's quite simple. This is equivalent fractions. So this is a screenshot of game one. So this is the kind of one of the screens that the students would see in level one. And the idea here is that they've got to Captain Taylor and River's airships being hit by the evil Sky Lord Quinn, and the wires have been damaged. And in order to continue their journey, the students have got to help Captain Taylor and River repair the damaged wires. And in order to do this, they need to use what they know about fractions to help them. So you can see the first example's done for us. We've got two halves that make a whole. And then the second wire is partially completed. Now, obviously, I know you know this, but what wires would we drag up to complete that second one? Anybody want to shout out or write in the chat? I mean, obviously, I know it's obvious, it's really simple, but it's just to give you a kind of sense of what the students, what the student experience would be. I can't see it on. Can I go into the chat? Let's just see.
We haven't got any answers.
Yeah, so it would be 2 quarters. It would be another 2 quarters, isn't it? So you'd be dragging up the two quarters to make. So then the students understand that 4 quarters make a whole, and so on. So that's how it would develop. And then in level 2, oops, sorry, apologies. In level 2. Right, not moving. There we go. In level 2, challenges slightly increased because they've got to do the same thing, make a whole, but this time using a mixed combination of wires and fractions. And then finally, in level 3 of game 1, again, the idea is to make a whole, but this time the students are required to deal with more complex fractions in order to make a whole. So that gives you a very, very sort of quick view of one of the games. I've talked about some of the features already, but just 2 that I'd like to draw your attention to from this slide, really. The first one is about the help menu, and this links to a point I made earlier about us being very, very keen to try to create opportunities for students to have more autonomy in their learning and more thinking time as well. So what students can actually do as they're playing the games is they can actually pause the live game. And so let's say they're doing something in game 5 that's around converting fractions, and they're thinking, oh, actually, I'm not quite sure, I need just to go back and check. They can pause the live game, go to the help menu, get the help they need, and then restart the game. And the game restarts at the point at which they paused it. And then, so that's important from a kind of mathematical perspective. And then from a language perspective, we developed a glossary as well, because we were very conscious there's a lot of language in these games, and some perhaps quite complex language. So what we tried to do was, as a language team, we tried to identify or predict what language aspects of language the students might struggle with. And so these are highlighted in blue within the game, and if the students hover over that, then that takes them to some alternatives that are hopefully more easy for the students to access. Okay, so briefly then onto the digital portfolio, which, as I said, was the second output from the project. Quickly some aims of the project. I'll whiz through these because I'm sure I'm tight on time. But again, it was very much about trying to support and reinforce the key skills and concepts and knowledge, and developing the learners' understanding of that, but also thinking about teachers and providing opportunities for both teachers and learners to have opportunities to apply and transfer knowledge, skills and understanding in new contexts. These were sort of 4 of the kind of key elements that were sort of fundamental in the development and the design of the digital portfolio. One thing I would like to just pick up on that is, you know, all the materials that are included within the digital portfolio, whether they are mathematics orientated or more language based, they've all been agreed by members of both the maths and language team. And then we've tried to have a range of different activities. There's a rationale for each one, so there's a scientific rationale for each of the activities, and if I've got time I'll quickly show you what that might look like. And again, the digital portfolio, as is suggested in the title, is digital, and it's another interactive resource. Just one thing I'd like to pick up from this slide really is, I mentioned that there are 3 types of activity, and how we've defined those or categorized those are, they're either introductory activities, core activities, or extension. And as I've already said, each activity is underpinned by a scientific rationale. And then the other thing I should say at this juncture as well is that this is intended to be a standalone resource. So yes, it can be used in conjunction with the Fractio Quest app, but we didn't want to make that a stipulation. So I'm just going to try and show you very quickly a little bit of the digital portfolio. I hope you can see that. So we'll go in and we'll just select English. You can access the app this way, but it's better for people to actually download it via the Google Store.
We can't actually see the portfolio.
Oh, right, okay.
She's sharing the PowerPoint, she's not sharing the screen.
Oh, you need to share the screen.
All right, okay.
If you can share the other window, because at the moment you're sharing.
Right,
your
yeah.
PowerPoint.
I've got it. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, thank you. I'm glad I've got.
I'm just relaying what I'm hearing here. Oh, we can see it now.
That's really
great.
helpful. Thank you, because obviously I don't know that you can't see that. So yeah, so as I say, at this point you can actually you can get to the app this way, but as I was saying, it's better to download it from Google Play or the Apple Store. So let's go into the digital portfolio. Again, gives you a little bit of rationale behind the digital portfolio, and then let's get into actually the things. So because we've been looking at game one, we'll stick with game one. So we get in, hopefully, and here you can see. So each game within the digital portfolio. So game one obviously aligns to equivalent fraction. Game two within the digital portfolio aligns to adding and subtraction, which is game two in Fractio Quest app. So you can see here we've got the labeling of the we've got the key to label the different, so whether an activity is a core or introductory activity. So if we'll have a little look at train of rods. So you can see here, and this is the model we've used for each of the activities within the digital portfolio. So there's some contextualization, there's a description of the activity, and then links to whatever the activity might be. This is online. I'm not a mathematician, so forgive me, but this is using, so it's using manipulative materials, in this instance digital Cuisinier rods. Now if teachers want to use the resource in a different way, there's also a PDF version of the of the same activity. So there's sort of choice there for teachers and also students. Oops, sorry, I've got too many windows open now, apologies. Right, let me get back. Right, okay. And then the last thing I want to sort of really show you is I've spoken about this rationale, this scientific rationale. So this is an example. As I've said, this activity is about the use of manipulative materials in mathematics. So the mathematics team have put together a very, very brief sort of rationale and information about why and how manipulatives are playing a significant part in mathematics, alongside some key references there from research. So that's the digital portfolio, very, very briefly. Sorry it's so brief. I'm just going to come back to right. Okay, I just need to share my PowerPoint again. Apologies for right. Yeah. So I'll go to whoops. Where I was. There we go. We're almost done. So really then it was the last thing I suppose we to say is we've been thinking about kind of what the next steps are for us, and we've sort of got four areas really. The first one really is about thinking about how multilingual learners engage with language. Firstly, to access subject content, but also then how do they use language to process that subject content and knowledge and concepts, and how do they communicate that both to each other and also to teachers. And then we're very aware as well that very often multilingual learners are using other strategies, for example multimodal strategies, to actually make sense of subject content, knowledge and concepts. And the other sort of third area that we're really keen to explore and really develop our knowledge understanding of is this different ways of knowing that I talked about earlier in my presentation. So this idea of, well, we talk about this, that students need to think and act like a mathematician or a scientist or a historian. but actually what does that look like? So really sort of trying to get to grips with this idea of disciplinary literacies. And then the last thing is there is a follow-up Erasmus Plus project, PMaths Erasmus Plus project, that's led by my colleagues at the University of Cordoba. And I think all that is left for me to say is a huge thank you. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for listening. I hope there's been something that's been of interest or use to you during the course of my presentation. And yeah, I don't know if we've got time for some comments or questions. I'm not sure, but I'll stop sharing now. Thank you.